Many huge ongoing lore questions from the overall Doom timeline were answered in Doom the Dark Ages. A large goal of Doom the Dark Ages was to show most of the narrative on screen, rather than hiding it in the codex. It was beneficial to the story of this game, allowing the story events to be more fleshed out. However, that resulted in a much smaller in-game codex this time around, limiting us more than usual to knowledge of the overall world of Doom. However, id Software knows exactly what we want to see, and knows what we're asking, so they found smart ways to answer these questions without breaking out of the narrative that they're trying to tell in this title. There's a lot of questions to answer here, and a lot to tackle, and I'll get to all of them at some point, but let's just do a few for now. Where did the elemental wraiths, the ancient gods of Argent Dinur, come from? Before they learned of the Makers, the Night Sentinels worshipped the elemental wraiths, deities and the first beings of Argent Dinur. Originally in Sentinel lore, it was said that a large crystal spear fell from the heavens and pierced entirely through their world. The wraiths emerged shortly after, and with their immense power, they were responsible for breathing life into the realm, starting with the Ancestrals, which we also learn much more about in the Dark Ages. After the Argenta came to be, they, out of fear of their great power, began to worship the wraiths, as the Night Sentinels protected them in their power. Eventually, the wraiths were cursed by a Hell Priest and were trapped in a location in Hell known as the Well. There, the wraiths' power was harnessed for Hell's use for the rest of eternity, which led to the fall of the Night Sentinels. It is pretty much assumed that there were very few, as we only see 3 left when we travel to the Well in 2016, to rid Hell of the power source. But the Ancient Gods 2 made us question everything we knew about the elemental wraiths. In the Ancient Gods 2, the Doomslayer once again travels to the realm of Argent Dinur, where he enters the World Spear to retrieve a shard of the crystal to power an ancient gate. Upon arriving, the Slayer is surrounded by a mysterious cyclopean architecture, and more importantly, the sight of thousands, if not millions, of elemental wraiths resting or hibernating. Dormant. To top it all off, it appears that the spear isn't a crystal at all, but rather a ship. This planet-sized vessel containing the wraiths left more questions than it answered. Was this really sent from the heavens? Was this a creation of the Fathers? Was this a creation of Devoths, as he states all things were made by his hand? Or is it from somewhere else entirely? Doom the Dark Ages takes us to the cosmic realm, a Lovecraftian realm that questions all of reality. A dimension that doesn't obey the laws of nature or physics. While home to many ancient eldritch beings, the realm is full of mysterious power and great dread. The realm, along with its power, is unknown by others. While this sparks many new ideas and theories, it at least reveals to us a large lingering mystery of the franchise. The game very clearly tells us that the elemental wraiths are in fact tied to the cosmic realm, as they are descendants. The realm has that very familiar cyclopean architecture as seen in the World Spear. And we even see a similar species to the wraiths, possibly a variation or species of origin. In Doom the Dark Ages, Prince Azric of Hell allies with an old witch of the cosmic realm to combine their power to find the soul of the original wraith, which will heavily raise the limit of their power. The first ever elemental wraith to emerge from the World Spear in Argent Dinur also somehow resides inside of Thera, King Novik's daughter. And the fact that the ceremony to extract its energy can only be done in the cosmic realm shows us that the wraiths, possibly unknown to themselves, are a direct species from this realm. So the World Spear did not fall from the heavens, as long thought by the Night Sentinels, but rather was sent from the cosmic realm. While the game didn't show us too much of it, we still have yet a lot to learn about the cosmic dimension and its places, knowledge, and potential. But at least now we know the broad strokes of the origin of the wraiths. Knowing the wraiths' general origin sheds some light on how the power of the wraiths seems to challenge that of the Makers.
Not even Urdak gave off readings like this.
Who or what in the cosmic realm created this vessel? And why did they send off millions of organisms of an extremely powerful species to another dimension? Well, while I'd love to talk about who it might be, it's pretty unknown and all up to theory. So, more on that later. With this new information, we can also piece together how old the wraiths are. The World Spear pierced Argent Dinur millions of years ago. And if they truly are from the cosmic realm, then that realm must be millions of years older, making it possibly one of the oldest and one of the strongest realms of them all. So, the elemental wraiths are some of the oldest beings ever. Why is there an ancient sentinel city on Mars, and what is its purpose? The lost city of Hebeth was a large mystery first questioned in Doom Eternal. In Eternal, the Slayer needs to access a sentinel slipgate that is hidden in an ancient city inside the core of Mars. It's a great excuse to allow the player to see some amazing places while doing some awesome things, but how did it fit into the story? Why are the Night Sentinels, a human species from a different realm, accessing the dimension where Earth resides? It's outside of their territory. Well, in Doom Eternal, the lost city of Hebeth was a port city, one where they could travel across their realm through slipgates as a means of transportation, nice and out of the way. While it's never confirmed in-game, most people theorize that it was perhaps the Slayer that led them them there long ago. And maybe it was in a different realm as a means to stay hidden away from their realm, and especially Hell. And the Dark Ages confirms that to be mostly true. The now confusingly planet Elphabeth, located safely away from the Sentinel's homeworld, now acts as both a port and a military facility. For the Sentinel military, Hebeth acts as a research and development center for Atlan mechs and other weaponry, as seen in the Plasma Labs. It also houses a new trans-dimensional barrier, a defense which keeps Hell from being able to directly access and invade their realm. The trans-dimensional barrier was built on Hebeth because of its separation from Argent after the arrival of the Slayer, and when the war with Hell began, so it's likely the Slayer had some influence on this. However, the Dark Ages Codex implies that it acted as a port before that, before the trans-dimensional barrier was built. So, does this mean that the Argenta learned of and colonized Mars long before the arrival of the Outlander? It's possible they just so happened to travel there on their own long ago and discovered Mars for themselves, but maybe more questions were asked than answered. But hey, at least now we know Hebeth's purpose on a much broader scale. Why does the Doomslayer see the mark of the Slayer? What does that symbol truly mean? Now I know what you're thinking, we already know what it means, and that's true, but I'm referring to the Novik speeches and the Slayer symbol flashes that we always see.
Rip and tear until it is done.
There has been at least one instance of it in every entry in the reboot series. The symbol shows up, we hear the speech from King Novik, and our adventure begins. In Doom 2016, it was assumed that it was just the sarcophagus, as it was quite literally in front of him, but as we saw more of them, players often theorized that the Slayer was perhaps hallucinating, or seeing it in his head.
We will send unto them only you.
Doom the Dark Ages gives us much more insight on this. So, as we know, the Mark of the Slayer has several meanings. It was a warning to Hell of the Slayer, it represented the presence of the Doomslayer himself, and it was quite literally the Mark of the Beast. That last one kind of goes with the fact that it's also the Mark of the Primeval, but whatever. However, that still doesn't answer the question of why we see it so much, or rather why the Slayer sees it. In Dark Ages, the Slayer sees it multiple times during cinematics, directly confirming it is in fact in the Slayer's head. He is seeing this. That's a pretty big reveal, but still, why does he sort of hallucinate this? The first time we see it, he is under divine control through the Maker tether attached to his chest. The Doomslayer is lost in his mind, and as the Slayer's symbol appears, he is able to slowly take control of his body.
Clearing. Slayer vitals increasing.
He eventually snaps out of the divine energy that is restraining his mind, and breaks free into reality. The Makers then apply more energy to the tether to overpower his mind. Later in the game, when the Doomslayer dies, we again see the Mark of the Slayer appear, as Novik's words echo, and the Slayer is back. This is not just a storytelling device to communicate something to the player, but rather is the Slayer actually seeing this mark. By controlling him, the Makers are attempting to purify his mind, only leaving behind his hatred for Hell. So that's all that's left right now. However, as we all know, the Doomslayer's strength is matched by his will, and his will is his hatred for the demons. That is his ultimate power source. So earlier, the Makers were attempting to disable the Slayer by increasing the tether's energy. When he attempted to break free, he was regaining control of his mind and his body due to his ever-growing rage. As the Makers increased the Heaven energy, so did the Slayer's hatred and anger. It will always overpower any threat he faces. Even death can't beat the Doomslayer, as his unrelenting rage will always bring him back. This is further represented with the Berserk power-up immediately following Doomguy's awakening. The Slayer sees this symbol because he quite literally is this symbol. He is everything this symbol represents. His hatred, his rage, his power. That is who he is. That is what's always on his mind. So the Slayer sees the symbol as he sort of channels his rage, perhaps similar to how we as average humans get red during moments of great anger. This symbol means a lot of things, but what it represents most, and why we see it all the time, is due to the Slayer's forever increasing rage, his greatest weapon. And this was also kind of hinted at by Hugo during the live streams. So the last topic I'm covering today will be short, as I recently covered it in its own video. Why does the Doomslayer kneel to King Novik? Why does he respect him so much? The answer is pretty simple. When Doom Eternal released, a lot of casual players who weren't familiar with the lore assumed the Slayer was kneeling out of submission, or as a servant to a king. It was left vague, but a lot of players also came to the conclusion that he wasn't kneeling out of submission, but out of respect and honor to his old ally. Upon investigating the Codex, it was made pretty clear of that to the player. And this was heavily fleshed out in Doom the Dark Ages, as we saw King Novik grow from fearing and untrusting of the Slayer to respecting and putting faith in him. We see the Slayer earn King Novik's trust by the end of the game, as Novik owes his life and the Sentinel's victory to him. Novik was truly a good king who cared and would die for his people, so that respect was mutual. I mean, the Slayer even stopped speaking long ago, so the fact that he chose to speak, and only to King Novik, says a lot. And it's cool to finally see the Doomslayer have a true ally, other than the Betrayer. These story details and new context made the Doomslayer kneeling in Doom Eternal much more satisfying, as we now know more of their history as old friends and allies, and why exactly he respects and chooses to honor Novik. Like I said, I have a video on this topic that's more fleshed out. It was met with mixed reception, but that video was meant for casual gamers coming from Doom 2016 and going into Doom Eternal, who misunderstood the context of the Slayer kneeling and assumed it was out of submission and thought that it was out of character for the Doomslayer. I was attempting to explain it from that perspective, but the intention of the video was overall to explain that the Doomslayer was kneeling to Novik simply out of respect, not submission. That those casual players had misinterpreted the scene's meaning. I thought it was pretty obvious and was my underlying statement in the video, but many people thought I too was misunderstanding the correct context. And it was my fault for not clearly stating in the video that it was meant for casual players who were mistaken, and for some reason thought the Slayer was kneeling out of submission, but I was just trying to present the video as sort of a theory. But you can still check it out. While Doom the Dark Ages answers many questions, it's safe to say that a lot of them are more up to theory or a second episode. Some more questions that the game answers include, can the Doomslayer die, and how did the Sentinels learn of the Maker's deceit? I plan on covering a lot of things, and I'll get to them over time. Just remember that this is what I took of the story. A lot of it's fact, but a lot of it's also theory. Tell me what y'all think in the comments. I know just about every aspect of Doom's lore. I've been playing them since before Doom 3. A lot of things I have to say don't seem to get fleshed out by other Doom channels all that much. So while I work on my next project, I think it'll be fun to cover whatever Doom lore question or topic from the first person to ask, the first commenter. Whichever viewer comments and asks a Doom lore question first, I'll cover that as my next topic, but only the first one. Thanks again for watching, and until we see each other again.